The dead man's hand just grab your ankle. You don't scream. You learned weeks ago that screaming gets you killed. You drive your boot heel down hard, and you don't look at what's underneath it. You don't have time, because behind you, in the dark Kansas grassland, you can already hear the sound. That low, wet, shuffling sound. Like 100 men walking with broken legs. You run. Yeah, welcome back. Except today. Today, we're not watching someone else survive. Today, you are the one doing it. I'm going to put you inside the most brutal, most real survival scenario I've ever built for this channel. We're going back to 1866, the American West. And while the nation is still bleeding from a civil war that just ended, while politicians are screaming at each other in Washington, and the railroads are tearing across the continent, and the army is chasing native tribes across the plains, a pandemic is spreading. And nobody is calling it what it is. The dead are walking. And you, partner, you are the only person keeping yourself alive. Stay in the character. Every choice in this video is your choice. Let's go. They call you the Drifter. Not your real name. Nobody out here uses real names. Real names are for people with futures, for men who plan to stay somewhere long enough for it to matter. You are not that kind of man. Not anymore. You used to be, before the war, before Appomattox, before whatever happened in the Louisiana bottomlands spread up the river valleys and followed the cattle trails west and started turning your world into something that doesn't have a name yet. Here's what you need to understand about where you are and when you are. It is the summer of 1866. The Civil War ended 14 months ago. Lee surrendered. 500,000 men are dead, and the country looks like a man who survived a knife fight, but isn't sure the knife is gone. President Andrew Johnson is at war with Congress over Reconstruction. The radical Republicans want to punish the South. The freed slaves want land and rights in a country that means what it says. The old Confederate states want amnesty. Nobody agrees on anything. And while Washington tears itself apart, the frontier is left completely alone. That's where you live. The frontier, Kansas territory, the high plains. Out here, the law is whoever has the best gun and the steadiest nerve. Towns like Hayes City and Abilene and Ellsworth are raw lumber and canvas and mud streets. And on any given Saturday night, somebody gets shot over something that wouldn't cause a raised eyebrow back east. Veterans from both sides of the war. Men who learned to kill and forgot how to do anything else. Pour west like a flood of human wreckage looking for land, for gold, for reinvention. The railroad is pushing iron tracks across the continent, and everywhere the railroad goes, towns bloom like ugly flowers, and violence is the first civic institution. That is the world you move through. Hard, beautiful, merciless. And now, on top of everything else, the dead don't stay dead. You've been watching it for months. It started with rumors from the South. Burial details going missing. A soldier brought back to camp after dying of a wound, placed on a surgeon's table and sitting up. The army called it desertion, called it mass hysteria, called it anything except what it was. You have your own theory. You're not a doctor, but you know what contaminated water does to a cattle herd. You know how disease moves, through blood, through bite, following the rivers, following the trails. The Mississippi bottomlands in 1865 held the bodies of tens of thousands of war dead, buried in mass graves, poorly limed, improperly treated. Something in all that death, something in all that concentrated rot, turned. And whatever it turned into spread exactly the way a disease spreads, through the vectors of human movement. The cattle drives, the river traffic, the veterans moving west. By the time the gray ones, that's what everyone calls them, the gray ones or the walkers or in the rougher camps, just the hungry. By the time they reached Kansas, the government's response was exactly what you'd expect from a government too busy fighting itself to look west. Nothing. So here you are, alive, for months on foot, since your horse got bitten crossing the Cimarron. For months of moving through a broken world with Sharp's carbine, a Colt Navy revolver, a Bowie knife, and everything you learn about staying invisible from a Pawnee tracker who once took a liking to you for reasons you never understood. You are not brave. You want to be clear about that. Brave men die first out here. They always have. You are careful, and careful is the only currency that still spends. Before we go any further, you need to know the rules, because this world has rules. And the men who died, most of them died because they didn't understand them fast enough. Rule 1. Sound is death. The gray ones are not smart. They cannot plan. They cannot reason. They don't even really hunt. Hunting implies intention. What they do is respond. They are drawn to sound, to smell, to movement. A man sitting completely still in a dark room is effectively invisible to them. A man who fires a gun in a dead town pulls every gray one within half a mile. This is a rule that kills the most people. Because every instinct you have from the old world, shoot fast, shoot loud, shoot first, is exactly wrong here. The frontier rewarded men who were quick on the draw. This new world rewards men who never draw at all. You have internalized this. It costs you things to internalize it. You don't fire unless there is no other option. And when you do, you're already moving, because the sound of that shot is an invitation to every gray one in range. Rule 2. Cold slows them. You don't know the biology. Nobody does. What you know from observation is this. In the cool hours before dawn in the winter nights, the gray ones move like men walking through waist-deep water. Slow, confused. In the summer heat, they're faster, more agitated. This means you move at night when you can. You cross open ground in the blue hour before first light. You plan your routes around temperature, the way a river pilot plans routes around shoals. Rule 3. They follow pattern. Gray ones, left their own, wander in rough circles around wherever they were when they turned. Unless something draws them, a sound, a smell, a fire. This means a town that had 100 residents when the sickness hit now has 100 gray ones wandering its streets in slow, repetitive loops. You can map their patterns. You can predict them. You can walk through them if you're patient and quiet and you rub sage ash into your skin and your clothes to cover your scent. A trick you learned from a Cheyenne girl you met 2 weeks ago and trust more than almost anyone alive. Rule 4. A bite is a death sentence. Not immediately. Over the course of a day. Sometimes 2. Long enough to convince yourself it won't happen to you. Then it does. You have seen good men refuse to accept this. Seen them hide bites, keep moving, stay with the group. You understand the impulse and you cannot forgive it. The only mercy is speed, and speed requires honesty, and honesty in this world costs more than almost anything. You carry these rules the way you carry your weapons. They are the reason you're still breathing. You've been scouting Hays City for 2 days before you go in. That's the other thing about being a drifter. You don't walk into anything without knowing what it is first. You circle. You observe. You spend 2 days in the tall grass watching the barricades, watching the patrol patterns, watching the smoke from the cooking fires, and what it tells you about fuel supply and how many people are burning it. What you see tells you something organized is happening. Wagon wheels, timber, stacked bodies along the southern approach. Someone in there knows what they're doing. You go in before dawn. You move through the northern side so quietly that the man on watch doesn't see you until you're 5 feet from him. And that man is good. One of the best you'll meet out here, which is exactly how you know the settlement is worth entering. He has the face of a man who has stopped flinching. Union cavalry, you can tell the way he stands, always with a clear line to an exit. He sizes you up in about 3 seconds in the dark, makes a decision, and steps back. "We got coffee," he says. "Real coffee." You follow him in. There are 43 people in Hays City. The sheriff, because that's what you call him, that's what everyone calls him, has kept him alive for 6 weeks since the sickness came through on a cattle drive in late April. 2 bitten drovers who didn't know they were dying. One terrible night, when the town learned the truth about what they brought with them. 43 survivors from over 200. You do the math. You've been doing versions of that math for months. You meet the others in a way that survivors come to know each other, through shared labor, through shared watch, through the specific intimacy of people who have all lost the same kinds of things. The miner, a Cornish immigrant with a pickaxe and a blunt-spoken competence that makes him invaluable. The preacher, a freed black man who came west after emancipation to build a congregation and found something he never expected, who carries a Henry repeating rifle and a theology that recent events have stripped down to its studs. He doesn't talk about God much anymore. He talks about responsibility to the living. And the Native American girl, Cheyenne, you think, though you don't ask, who appeared at the eastern barricade one morning carrying a cavalry saber and nothing else, and who before anyone could debate her presence demonstrated that she could move through a group of gray ones in absolute silence. Her people have been evading the army for years. Evading the dead uses the same skill set. She and you understand each other immediately. Not friendship exactly, but recognition. 2 people who think the same way. She teaches you the sage-ash trick. You teach her how a controlled upwind burn steers gray ones in a predictable direction. You don't need to say much to each other. Out here, that's the best kind of partnership. For 3 weeks, Hays City holds. You run watches. You refine the perimeter. You teach the fighting men to think in terms of quiet and containment rather than fire and confrontation. Things are not good. Things are never good, but they are stable. And then the miner finds a problem. The well is contaminated. The secondary water source, a creek feeding from the Smoky Hill River, is running gray ones along its banks now. Thick enough that every collection trip is an armed operation that costs ammunition you can't replace. And there's something else. 6 miles north, along the railroad line, 40 Irish and German laborers have been barricaded in their supply camp since the sickness hit. They've been signaling in mirror code, something you rigged up with a miner. Their last signal came 3 days ago. Overrun imminent. Need rescue or burial. The sheriff calls a meeting. All the fighters, the preacher, the Native American girl, you. He lays it out without drama. 40 men, 6 miles going for them, means leaving the barricade undermanned. Leaving enough people to hold the barricade means sending too few to matter. Arguments go around the fire for 20 minutes. The preacher says you have an obligation. The miner says your obligation is to the people already here. 3 men say nothing, which you notice, because quiet men have already decided. Then the sheriff looks at you. What do you think, Drifter? And here it is, the moment, your moment. This is where the story splits. And both paths are real. Both paths have consequences. Because this is not a world that rewards you for feeling good about your choices. It rewards you for making the right ones. And sometimes you don't know which one that is until it's too late. You say, we go, but we go smart. 6 people. The quiet is 6. You, the Native American girl, the miner, the preacher, 2 of the men who've been sitting silent around that fire, because silent men don't panic. The sheriff stays. A commander doesn't leave his position. He knows this before you say it. You go at 3 in the morning. The Native American girl moves in front, saber wrapped in cloth so it doesn't ring, and you follow her track exactly, not near it, not parallel to it, exactly. The others follow yours. Single file, no talking, breathing slow. You pass 3 gray ones between Hays City and the rail camp, and none of them register you. The camp is bad. Not worst case, but bad. 11 turned, 29 living. The miner works with his pickaxe in the dark with a methodical grimness that you respect and will never describe in detail. The living men are barely alive, dehydrated, half-mad, but they're led by a German rail foreman who has kept them breathing through sheer refusal to consider alternatives. You lose 2 men going back. 1 panics. 1 falls and can't keep pace. The preacher has to make a 3-second decision and makes the right one, and you can see it written on him for the rest of the night. 27 men return to Hays City with you. The barricade holds. The sheriff opens the gate himself. That night, there is something in the settlement that is not fear, not happiness. None of you will be happy for a long time, maybe ever, but something close. The preacher says a few words, not about God, about the fact that 27 men are breathing who wouldn't be. He says it's enough. He's right. By September, a Union Army patrol finds Hays City standing, organized, functional. They send a surgeon. They send soldiers. The information you've accumulated, the behavior patterns, the contamination logic, the containment techniques, starts moving east. The gray ones are still out there. The Mississippi graves are deep and the dead are patient. But more people are alive in Kansas in October 1866 than were alive in July. You ride west in October. On a roan, gelding the sheriff trades you from cavalry supply. The Native American girl rides beside you without a word of discussion. She just saddled her horse when you saddled yours, and that's that. The Rockies ahead. Cold winters that slow the gray ones to near nothing. Thin population that prevents the massive hordes that swallowed the river towns. You learn to survive. You're passing it on. And you're not riding alone. That's the good ending. Hold on to it. But what if you say no? What if the arithmetic wins? What if you look at those odds, 40 men, 3 days ago, possibly already turned, and your careful brain says the numbers don't work? You say, we stay. The sheriff sides with you. He trusts your judgment. That trust will cost him everything. What you don't calculate, what your caution, your survival philosophy, fails to account for, is this. 3 of your fighters have people in that rail camp. Brothers, friends, in one case, a son. Your probability math means nothing weighed against that. They go that night, without telling you. Horses, the northern gate, in the dark. They make it there. They find 29 living men and 11 gray ones, just as you would have found. But then they do what panic men with guns always do. They shoot multiple shots, rolling fire in the flat Kansas night. The sound carries 6 miles in every direction. You didn't account for how many gray ones were dormant in the tall grass. The summer warmth, the months of spread through the cattle herds. There are hundreds of them out there, cold and slow and patient, and the gunfire wakes every single one. The wave hits the barricades around midnight. The sheriff dies on the north wall with a revolver in each hand, exactly how he would have chosen. That is not a comfort. The miner dies buying time for women and children to reach the southern exit. You find his pickaxe afterward with 3 gray ones dead around it. You, the preacher, the Native American girl, 15 others. You break south in the chaos, threading to the horde in the dark while it's occupied with noise and fire. You survive because you're quiet and the settlement's collapse is loud enough to give you cover. But Hays City is gone. You think about it every night since, whether your decision killed the sheriff and the miner. The honest answer, partly, you chose pure caution and it forced other men into reckless action, and the consequences cascaded in ways you didn't model. A careful rescue, your rescue, the quiet kind, might have worked. You didn't try. Survival that costs everything else is just a slower kind of dying. You know that now. By December, there are 8 of you left. The Native American girl finds a Cheyenne winter camp in the Republican River country. Her people adapted to this hostile world faster than any white settlement because they never had the luxury of thinking themselves safe. They take you in. You survive the winter. You are alive. You carry 43 as a number the way you carry your carbine, always and never lightly. Here's the thing about both of those endings. Neither one is clean. Neither one gives you everything back. This isn't that kind of story. The good ending asks you to be brave when every instinct says be safe. The bad ending shows you what happens when caution becomes cowardice dressed up in logic. The West didn't reward heroes. It didn't reward cowards either. It rewarded people who could hold both things at once, the calculation and humanity, the stillness and the willingness to move, the survival instinct and the understanding that a life with no one else in it isn't actually a life worth all that much. You are the drifter. You move through a broken, beautiful, merciless world. You are still breathing. Whether that's enough, that's the question you're going to be asking yourself for a long time. If you want to keep riding with me through worlds like this, hit subscribe. Drop in the comments which ending you chose and why. And if you think you could survive 1866 Kansas, tell me your strategy, because I genuinely want to know. Ride out, stay quiet, and don't let them hear you coming.